This is how I landed and built my first freelance project. No Upwork, no cold emails. It all started from a message I sent to a friend on Facebook. Around August 2023, I quit my job and started traveling throughout Southeast Asia. Before that, I've been working as a UX designer in tech companies and universities in Sydney for about 3 years. After I started traveling, I didn't jump into freelancing immediately. I actually spent most of the time exploring other interests and hobbies. And then around November last year, I started seriously looking into the options to freelance as a web designer and developer. It took me about 5 months to land my first paid work. But before then, I had already started to do a lot of preparation. For example, I helped build the website of my boyfriend, also worked on my portfolio website, and worked on designing this wellness app for independent creatives. And if you are curious about my other projects, I've linked them in the description. Feel free to check it out. Now, how did I actually find my first freelancing client? As we all know, finding freelancing client is the hardest part in the process. For web design projects, most people would go for the freelancing sites such as Upwork or Fiverr. But from my experience, the competition there is just extremely high. And for Upwork, you actually have to pay money to get tokens to apply for jobs. And oftentimes, there are more than 50 or 60 people to go for one job. I actually spent more than 50 Australian dollars without getting any interview. So for me, it was just a bit of waste of time, resources, and energy. So instead, I decided to start from people around me. So I reached out to my friends on Facebook, and to my surprise, not long after I started reaching out, one of my friends actually said yes to this because he was actually looking for someone to help build his website. And because we already know each other, he felt more comfortable working with me. So before I started, I actually sent the client a questionnaire. So the goal of the questionnaire was to basically understand the business of the client, their needs and wants, and also their frustrations. Looking back now, this was actually a very important step. It gave me lots of clarity on their target audience, their business goals, which directly influenced the structure of the website, the visual style, how the copy would go, and the interaction design as well. I've linked my questionnaire in the description. If you're interested, feel free to check it out. After getting their responses for the questionnaire, I started creating a proposal for the project, which included the goal of the project, the timeline, proposed structure of the site, what will be included and what will not be included, and the payment options, etc. Once the client agreed to the proposal and paid the deposit, that's when the project officially started. At the beginning, there was a lot they wanted to say, but it was quite scattered. So instead of jumping straight into the design, what I did first is to gather all the information and organize them into a clear structure. I grouped the content such as about, services, and contact, and then defined what pages will be relevant for this specific website. At the same time, I thought about the user journey. What do they see first? And how do they navigate the website? And what action do we want them to take in the end? I usually map this out, something simple like a sitemap. And I've learned that this is very crucial as well, because even though the site can look very beautiful, but if it doesn't make sense, it's not easy to navigate, it wouldn't be useful for the users. Once the structure is clear, I've moved into the design phase. I usually start with a homepage, because once the homepage is approved, the rest of the pages can just follow the same structure and style. So for the homepage design, it happens in Figma, and I basically do 2 steps. In the first step, I do a quick wireframe design, which is a low fidelity. The key point in this process is to try to keep the style very minimal, just keep it black and white and gray, no colors, no fancy fonts, just text placeholders and image placeholders. So the point of this is basically to show the client the structure of the website and not really about the design. This is very important to communicate with the client as well at the beginning so that they don't get too focused on the details of the website. So once the wireframe is proved, then I move on to the high fidelity prototypes. So this stage, I mainly use Figma, and I design both desktop and mobile version. And this is where the visual interaction comes in, how the site looks and feel, and how users are supposed to interact with it. For this project, we used a lot of imagery that reflects a sense of calmness and serenity, such as using the pictures of nature, like mountains and rivers. For the development of the site, I use HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. So I custom-made this website and hosted it onto GitHub page. The coding process went rather smoothly because everything we did previously, the design and the site structure really helped make sure that it's easy to build the site later on. And one key focus during the building process was the user interaction. Because the nature of the client's business, which is about healing, I wanted the interaction to feel calm and intentional. For example, when the page firstly loads, the hero text and buttons appear in a slow and orderly way to create a sense of calm and transformation. So there were several challenges in this project. Firstly, the timeline. The honest truth is, the project actually ended up taking 50% longer than expected. And yet, the biggest challenge was actually managing clients' expectations. Halfway through the project, the client suddenly wanted a change of direction. So instead of having just a static website, what he wanted was actually to include payment option. So I spent a lot of time researching the best options that wouldn't require a lot of back-end development. In the end, this became a huge blocker. I actually proposed 4 different solutions to this, and none of that worked due to the various conditions that client has. So what I learned from this is that clear communication with the client to set his expectation is crucial for this type of project. Basically, what you really need to define with the client is what is going to be included in this project and what not to be included, and also how many revisions there should be. So all of this should be communicated clearly before the project starts. Despite the challenges, the site launched successfully, and the client was very happy. He even offered to pay extra for the extended timeline and additional work as well. Looking back, the biggest lesson from this project is the importance of communication. And doing enough preparation, things like a questionnaire, will really help to prepare myself beforehand so that when it comes to design and development, I have sort of a guideline to follow. And finally, the most important thing is to just start. Don't wait for the perfect moment, because perfection doesn't really exist. You just have to start and learn the process to get better, and by doing it in the process, we'll get to know what works and what doesn't. I hope this video helped to give you some clarity in getting the first freelancing project. If you have any more questions, feel free to leave in the comments below, and I'll see you in my next video.